Well, it started when I was 4 years old, and I was taken to a very bloody rendition of Romeo and Juliet by my mother. And when it came time for the star-crossed lovers to die at the end, huge red explosions, like of tapers, like exploded out of their chests, like hundreds of feet into the air. And like that was my first realization of death and blood, and it was such a beautiful experience for me. I cried when I was 4. So seeing that just really like had me descend into trying to rent every single movie on the shelf in the video store that has like blood on it, like all the Puppet Master movies. I get really into it, and I try to sneak it into my mom's basket when I was a child, and yeah, it just took off from there. I've always been morbid.
Oh my God, horror, it's always been like my life. Ever since I was a little girl, I woke up one morning and I snuck into my father's VHS collection because I wasn't allowed to watch horror movies. And I grabbed one out to watch, and it was John Carpenter's Halloween. And ever since then, just being frightened and scared, and God, it just, for some reason, it didn't really scare me as much as it intrigued me. So ever since then, it was Edgar Allan Poe, it was Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and horror just took over.
When I grew up, horror was still totally independently funded. It hadn't been hijacked by studios yet. So for me, horror films in the 70s and 80s were very much where the auteurs went, and where people who had a subversive view or something intelligent to say that might be a little bit subversive, and people who were really creative and wanted to explore boundaries and subvert genre conventions went. So it's very different than my view of horror is very much still in line with thinking that that's where auteurs go, which of course is not at all the case anymore.
I think the appeal for horror fans in general, the thing that draws them to it is that it's cathartic. It's been said a million times, but it's true. It's that you get to go through an experience that's horrific and feel all of the emotions and the trauma that you would feel from having that experience without having to actually have it, and you can walk out of the theater and you're safe and you can kind of go, and that's that. Regardless of your gender, I think that's what a lot of people get out of it. And there are some people who prefer their horror films to be a little more silly or a little more, they just want to jump really quickly. And then there are other people who want to be more genuinely disturbed by their films. Like they want the films to be difficult, And I tend to be that kind of a fan myself. Like I like films that are kind of upsetting. And so that I'm just like thinking about it for days afterwards. But generally, I think it's just like it's an issue of control. It's kind of like, death is the thing that we don't have any control over. We have no control over when we die or how we die or anything. And watching horror movies is this cathartic way of like having control over that. Of like being able to defeat death.
It's just like when you're driving on the freeway and there's an accident, everyone has to look. It's not because they want to see a dead body, but because it's fascinating. Horror films, you can see this stuff. You can see the horror. You can be scared. You can see the blood and gore and know it's fake. But there is a weird need to see that stuff. And I think it's universal between men and women.
I think maybe people that criticize it aren't getting the full scope of it because of the fact what I just said about it really drawing so much on myth, and myth is something that affects us so deeply and has been around for so long for a very good reason, because it does affect us on such a deep level. So tapping into that, horror audiences may not know why they're so intrigued, but it's much more than just on a level of, splatter films where, people just want to see somebody's head cut off or something like that. We're actually drawn to it because it's got some power and cathartic power.
I don't think the horror genre is any more degrading to women than any other genre. I think individual entries into all genres can be. I think that's an individual film issue, not a genre issue. I do think a lot of films are incredibly empowering to women, and particularly in the horror genre, because they're frequently the final girl. They're put up into situations that women frequently aren't in other genres. I mean, it's life and death stakes. They have to use their wits and their brains and their strength to get through impossible situations. So I think it can be incredibly empowering to women.
I do believe horror can be empowering to women. I think there are many different ways in which a woman can be a role model to other women. She can be strong in the face of danger. She can be sexy while also being smart. She can be smart and run away from danger. She can be sexy and powerful in the sense that she might be the villain. She may not be good, but she still may be powerful. I think there's so many different ways a woman can be portrayed in a horror movie that I would look up to. Not necessarily in a bad way or, in a vile way. Like, there's also lots of ways women are portrayed where I find it degrading too. But I think you find that in film in general. I think women are equal parts degraded and glorified in romantic comedies. But it doesn't seem to be as much of an issue. Like, nobody seems to care that women over 30 in romantic comedies are portrayed as desperate to get married and humorless. And that men are portrayed as idiots who just want to get laid and accidentally fall into these crazy situations. Like, nobody cares about that. But for some reason, when it's paired with death and gore, people get very upset and people take it very personally. And I don't know why that is. I don't know why it matters more than any other genre.
We'd sell t-shirts at the festival. We used to always buy the really large sizes because it was all guys. Now we are having to buy smaller sizes for the ladies because we're getting all the ladies coming out. They love horror just as much. They're here to support. Especially, a lot of them come out just to support the female filmmakers and the female screenwriters. And so just that simple thing, when you asked the question, I immediately thought of the t-shirts and how we used to always order the larger sizes. And now we have to make sure we have the small ones for the ladies, they're cut differently than the men's. But that's one of the biggest things that we've noticed because there are more women coming to the festival. And there's women coming out of the screenings talking about the films. They know their stuff, just like the men. It's not just, the horror genre is not just for men anymore. And not that I ever thought it really was, but it's really more obvious that there are a lot of female fans. And it's really great because, doing this festival and we get to see that we're pleasing the entire population instead of just the guys is really nice.
I think nowadays more and more females are coming up in the horror genre, so a lot of that's going to be changing. Like, I would love in my next movie to have a guy naked get killed. Why not, right?
For me, I'm very interested in the psychology of people, and I like pushing boundaries, and I like exploring philosophy. And so it just seems like that's the only place where you can really go as an independent funded artist and still be able to find an audience that will pay for you to explore that and have that privilege of pushing boundaries and be able to make your next film.
There's so many more women directors. There's so many more women producers and cinematographers, and we're slowly taking over, and it's a beautiful thing.